So I want to make for you my grandmother's spaghetti sauce. I make this a lot. In fact, I have other YouTube videos talking about this because it really is my favorite thing to make. Her spaghetti sauce is really something that makes me think about childhood. Every time I'd go to my grandmother's house, she lived about 5 or 6 hours away. When we walked in, she always had this on the stove. And so the house always smelled this way. And my favorite thing to do is to make my house smell like my grandmother's house when I walked in, and it's just great memories. So here's what you need. You need a pound of hamburger, just regular hamburger, nothing fancy. All of this stuff is right out of the cabinets, okay? Right out of the fridge, right out of the cabinets, because this is the way she did it, okay? An onion, just a medium-sized onion. You need a tablespoon of sugar. You need 2 cloves of crushed garlic. So I use these, I get these from Trader Joe's, and they're frozen garlics, okay? I just do that because it's simple that way, and I always have garlic on hand. Fresh garlic is probably better, but this is just fine, okay? The rest of the ingredients are right out of your spice drawer. 2 bay leaves. So we just need 2 bay leaves to this. We need a teaspoon of oregano and a teaspoon of basil. And we'll put those in just a couple of minutes here. All right, you need tomatoes. If you have canned tomatoes, that's perfect. She always made it with her canned tomatoes. And I don't know how to can tomatoes. So if I did, I would use that. But this is a 28-ounce can of whole tomatoes. And you need a quart, really, so 4 cups of it. So I use like a little bit of another one. Okay, these are whole tomatoes. I just put them out in a quart, put the rest in the freezer, okay? So let's just get our onion going here real quick. I'm gonna cut this up. Just a medium-sized onion. And I like to cut it up just in a way that it will saute up very quickly. I serve this over just regular spaghetti noodles, nothing fancy. My grandparents, they lived in West Virginia, and so they just were regular folk, right? So this is just a regular meal and something that she would have. My mom said when she was a kid that her mother would make this on Wednesdays. Spaghetti night was Wednesday at their house. So a little olive oil in the pan. I turned my fire on as I'm cutting up this onion. Let me move these spices, hopefully you can see. Whenever you're cutting an onion, try not to cut it on your wooden cutting board because you know it's going to smell like onion forever after that. And I hate to cut fruit or something and you get that bit of, oh, I cut an onion on this thing. I hate that, right? It's just like, ooh. So not my favorite thing. So I know if you've watched this YouTube channel, you've seen me do this before. One of the keys to this is to have a potato masher. This is how I have been able to get my grandmother's taste to this. My grandmother had 5 children. None of them can make this sauce taste this way. I believe it's because of this potato masher. It makes the flavors come together, okay? So you're just cutting up your onion pretty nicely, very thin. We're going to get it here on the stove and get it cooked up a little bit. All right, here we go. So we'll get our onions going a little bit. Put that there. And let me get a saute stick. Let's do a little salt, shall we? This has a teaspoon of salt in it, the recipe. I'm using kosher salt because that's what I have. She used table salt, okay? I would use table salt if I had it here with me today because that's what she used. Table salt, to me, seems to be a little bit more salty. So what I find myself doing is when I use kosher salt, I find myself adding a little bit of salt at the end of this. So I'm just sauteing up the onions. Might as well put the garlic in right now. This is not going to burn. You know, some folks might say, "Oh, don't put your garlic in now; it'll burn." I'm not going to have it in there, but just a moment. These are, again, frozen from Trader Joe's. 1 clove, 2 cloves. That simple. Fresh. If I had fresh, I'd use fresh. I don't have it. One of the reasons I'm making this today is this is going to be in a photo shoot later. So I work at a television station in the news department, but we're putting together a fundraiser and they want family recipes from it. So this is the perfect family recipe for me. And so this particular dish that we're making today is going to be in a photo shoot. So I've got to make it look really nice, right? All right, I'm going to put in my pound of hamburger right now. We'll start browning that up. Oh, there we go. This just comes together so simply. And again, the great thing about this is it is in your cabinet. I mean, I keep the ingredients to this on hand all the time. If you want to make it for company, makes a great meal. It comes together very fast. But let's say you want to make this for company because it's that kind of good where you could make it for company and they would really enjoy it. Make it the day before because there's just something about making this the day before. The flavors all have some time to meld overnight. And then you just get a really great flavor all in, okay? So we're just letting this brown up. Let's talk about these tomatoes because this is how I like to do it. I like to go ahead and take the tomatoes and get my spices in there because this just makes it easy, and then it really all comes together and you're not just sprinkling it in different spots, okay? So this is my basil. This is a teaspoon of basil. You can be generous with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is oregano, a teaspoon of oregano. Okay, we've got our bay leaves, which we'll put in just as we let it simmer. Tablespoon of salt, not tablespoon of sugar, I should say. And then we want a teaspoon of salt. Okay, so a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to put a little bit more in because this is kosher salt. This browns up, it comes together very quickly. I'm using a 90-10 on this. So for a 90-10, I'm not going to drain it. There's just not a lot of fat in it. So I think that's okay. It's up to you on that, what you want to do. We're just browning this up. Make it really nice. You want a medium-sized onion in this. You can go small to medium. This one was on the larger side of medium, but it's what I had. You know, some of the best things about cooking is if you have things in the pantry that you just use, then it works, right? So, and you're used to doing it. So this is something I've made so many times that I really don't even need the recipe. But let me show you where I did put the recipe on this because it's just fun. When I left home and as a grown-up, my mother gave me a Betty Crocker cookbook because that's just what everybody has in the house. And I put the recipe right here. Isn't that great? I just wrote it right there with my grandmother's. So I have it always. I mean, I'm not going to get rid of that cookbook ever. So here we go. We're putting this together. And we're just browning up this ground beef. This is, once again, not a fancy meal at all, but the flavors are so good and so simple. Okay, that's browning up. While we're here, this is a bit messy, but I want to show you. These were whole tomatoes, right? So I'm just going to crush them with my hands. I got to put this down. I'm just going to crush these a little bit with my hands. Just kind of get your hand in there and crush these up. This is messy. You might want to put it in a bowl to do it, but I'm just doing it very gently, and that will get these started just a little bit. And you're already getting in with your spices that you've put in here. Let's stir it up just a little bit. Just got to use your hands on this, right? So there's one more tomato down in here we want to smash. There we go. And then as this gets in there and gets cooking, you're going to smash it over and over and over again. Messy hands, so just get a paper towel. Wipe it down. Right. All right, this is cooking really nicely now. All right, so here we go. Again, if you can make this a day ahead, it's really great. I've had a busy week. I'm just now getting to this. So this is going to be in a picture. So I'm not going to, I'll eat it later, but I'm not serving this to company. That's the thing. If you're having company over, let me tell you, and there's just something about this. When you're cooking for company, take your time. Food is always better if you take your time. I don't know why. I can rush through something and serve it to friends, and I'll think, this doesn't taste quite right. And there's something about rushing it that can really change the way the food tastes, in my opinion. I like to take my time. Okay, so in our tomatoes, we've got 4 cups, okay, a quart, a teaspoon of basil, a teaspoon of oregano, a teaspoon of salt. We have 2 bay leaves, a tablespoon of sugar. I don't know if I said that part. A tablespoon of sugar, 2 cloves of garlic, a medium onion. This is a 28-ounce can plus a little bit more, okay? So here we go. We're going to put this in. My bay leaves in. Let's just clean this up a little bit because I've made a big mess here. Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn the heat down because it's really cooking in. As you cook this, you may want to put a little water in it. Okay. Look at that. That's looking good. Really good. All right, so here's our trick. Smashing it. Smashing it. Smashing it. This is all we have to do. The other thing that you can do, especially if you have a lot of time to put this together, is to make it in a skillet that has a cover. Just because we're putting this together quickly, I just made it in a non-stick, and we'll put it together and we'll cook it here for a little bit. If you cook this within maybe 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, you have the effect and what you want. If you can cook it for a few hours, very low, very slow, then you really get the texture of it. Because so much of this sauce is really about the texture. Like right here, it's not quite right because it hasn't had the tomato smasher enough. You saw me do it once, okay? So you really have to go around and around and around. And this is what's making these flavors come together, okay? This is so important in this process. If you skip this, you just don't get the same flavor of this. And that's, my mother will ask me about it. She'll say, I just don't know how you do it. And I'll say, and she'll watch and she'll say, well, I don't do it that, I don't take the time to do it that much. I'm like, well, that's the thing. You have to take the time to put this together properly. And if you can make it a day ahead, then you can really, I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit because we want this to get a nice little roll on it of cooking. So turn the heat back up and let's really get this hot for a second. And then, let's do one more smash and then I'm going to do a little taste test. See what we got. Okay, just around and around and around and around and around. It really is I think sometimes I think when you want to have pasta for people over, you think, well, that's too basic or whatever. But you know what? If you have a great recipe for something and it's fantastic, I don't care how simple it is, your guests don't care about that. Okay? So you can see how small this is already getting, right? Let's give it a little taste. Already, it's so good. Again, I'm going to put a little bit more salt in this. because I'm not using just table salt. Kosher salt is less salty, so you got to put more in it. If you're making this recipe, use table salt if you have it. I'm out of table salt right now. I just don't have it. All right. Another smash. And you can see I've turned up the heat on this, bringing it to a nice little boil just for a few minutes. And then we're going to turn the heat back down. And every time you smash it, it seems like it's one of those things you're like, why do you keep doing it? But you're really bringing the flavors together every single time. If you try this, I want you to come back. By the way, subscribe to this channel. I want you to come back and I want you to tell me. You're going to want to send me a message. It's that good. Okay? It really, really is that good. All right. I would put this together with regular spaghetti noodles, your standard size, not angel hair, not fettuccine, not bucatini, just a regular size spaghetti noodle, the standard, okay? Because I think you're going to like it better. I've experimented with other types of pasta noodles, and I just don't like it as well. My grandmother serves this with cold slaw. And I think I figured out the reason that she did this. She passed before my grandfather. And when my grandfather passed, after his funeral, we went to a place called Jim's Spaghetti House. It is in Huntington, West Virginia. And we went to Jim's. And when we went to Jim's, we, of course, had spaghetti because that was the big thing, or that is the big thing. What's funny, we went on a Tuesday night in Huntington, West Virginia. We called to just see if they were open, and they said, yeah, but you need to make a reservation because we're slammed. I was like, it's Tuesday night. How can you be slammed? Slammed on a Tuesday night, and they were. But I will tell you, when they brought out the spaghetti, I'd never been there. It was just like my grandmother's. It had this very fine ground beef sauce, and they served it with cold slaw. Just like my grandmother did. So I think she worked and worked on the recipe until she got it a lot like Jim's. Okay, let's take a final look here, and I can give you kind of a show of what this is. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. All right, there you go. How's that? See how good that looks? It's just very fine. So good. I'm going to do a couple grinds of pepper here. Again, you make this early, if you can, and the flavors come together that much more. The sugar in it kind of adds a little bit of sweetness, takes away some of the sharpness of the tomato. That's how you put this together. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you try it.